I will start with my friend Lex Paulson, the head of the School of Collective Intelligence at the University Mohammed VI, Polytechnic. And we'll talk about how collective intelligence helps with better and smarter governance. Lex, you have the floor.
Thank you, Tarek. Thank you very much for hosting this event. It's a great pleasure to be part of this community of open government partnership. My first one of these events was in Tbilisi in 2000, I think it was 2016, 2015. And it's been a great pleasure as both a practitioner of participatory democracy and as an academic to be part of this. So I want to present just a few insights, I hope, onto this new field of collective intelligence that we're building in Morocco at the School of Collective Intelligence in Ben Gurir, and a bit about our work, a bit about how we hope to participate to this conversation about open smart governance. So I'm going to share my screen and present a few slides. Host disabled attendee screen sharing. Well, any way that we could allow me to share my screen?
Can you try now?
Yes, perfect. Well done.
All right.
Okay, so first, maybe some of you have heard this phrase, collective intelligence, thinking it's, I think it's just what happens when you put people in a room, they do things that are smart. Well, what I'd like to do is to present a little bit about how we think of the science of collective intelligence. So we know that collective intelligence is something that exists in our species, and we're not the only one, that there are many living creatures who work together better in groups than individually. So this is a natural phenomenon, collective intelligence. What we're doing in smart governance is something that's very natural to human beings. We're a social species, and we, since tens of thousands of years, have collaborated at larger and larger scales to solve complex problems, to interact with our environment. So the first thing is collective intelligence is a natural phenomenon. But the second part is that we can study it, because it's not a magic effect of putting many people in the room. You could also have people who become mobs, who become who don't work together very well. I think we all know the situation of being in an organization that is less intelligent than the individuals within it. So the collective intelligence field, which has really matured in the last 10 to 15 years, studies the conditions. What drives this phenomenon? How do we create the right conditions within a city, within a region, within a company? And this is our mission. The first message is, collective intelligence, something all around us, but also collective stupidity, which means that this opens the door to study this phenomenon as an academic discipline. And we really do believe that collective intelligence will be the science of the 21st century, and that will be something interesting for policymakers, mayors, and citizens alike. Why do we think that? Because, in the world of public policy, we inherit institutions. We don't get to make them up ourselves, we inherit them. And sometimes we inherit institutions that are very, very old. In the West, our institutions of representative liberal democracy sometimes date to the late 18th century, or the bureaucratic ministries that we try to influence and appeal to or make work better are often built on models that came from the early 20th century. And so we have institutions that are often 100, 200 years old in their model. Similarly, in the private sector, companies that are built on hierarchies, pyramids, assembly lines. But today's problems aren't like that. We live in a world that is increasingly interdependent, increasingly complex, increasingly influenced by technologies that didn't exist when our institutions were created. And so we need new and better modes of collaboration. In the last 10 to 15 years, we've seen a rise of new research centers working in an interdisciplinary way, both on the quantitative side, so collective intelligence as a discipline within computer science, mathematics, but also within political science and management science, to study how human beings can together solve more complex problems. And the School of Collective Intelligence in Morocco is the first of its kind. We are guided by the example of researchers such as the Center of Collective Intelligence at MIT, the Center for Collective Intelligence Design in London, the NESTA, the National Endowment for Science. But we are the first school in the world to offer a master's, an accredited master's, 2-year master's in collective intelligence, as well as a doctoral program in collective intelligence, built in partnership with researchers from all of these institutions, but located right here in Morocco. And we think that the kinds of interdisciplinary research programs, working across disciplines, working with practitioners, it's very difficult to create those kind of programs in well-established anchored institutions in Europe and America. And luckily in Morocco, we have an opportunity at UM6P to create something that might have been very difficult to create elsewhere. So we, as I said, just this last year received our accreditation from the Moroccan Ministry of Education for a master's program in collective intelligence, the first anywhere in the world. We're building a research program in partnership with MIT, NYU GovLab, and the École Normale Supérieure in Paris, which has one of the leading cognitive science departments in the world. And the idea is that our university aims to break down silos. We think that often that the governance space could benefit from insights from other scientific disciplines. And so one of our aims is to bring in cognitive scientists, data scientists, also facilitators from peace building, conflict resolution, community development, into one conversation about how we create the conditions to think together, to reason together, to tell stories and build meaning together, which are the conditions necessary for a government to work. Without meaning, without the ability to pool our knowledge, we're not going to be able to solve complex public problems. And finally, in Morocco, we have the chance on the African continent as a multilingual culture. I'm from America, my partners are from Morocco and France, Ireland, Syria. We have the chance to create a bridge between continents and cultures. We have built our program around 3 pillars. Cognition and the cognitive sciences. We also study systems and the design and redesign of governance systems in partnership with our partners at Impact for Development. We have conducted studies on the attitudes of citizens impacted by COVID as part of what we call the Mubadarat Open Innovation Platform this year, and to sharing ideas, gathering sentiment and data from citizens. We are committed to practicing in the field the insights that come from theory, that come from the cognitive science laboratories. And finally, working with partners like Impact for Development, we facilitate, we bring these kinds of systems to life through entrepreneurship, collaborative decision-making, emotional intelligence competencies, and dialogue. So why do we think this is important for the conversations about open and smart governance? Well, first, we think that there are fields important to these conversations that haven't always been connected to open government initiatives, like cognitive science. So I'll give an example. When you're creating a questionnaire or a survey to better understand what the community thinks, and this could be as simple as a Facebook post, how are you bringing in insights around cognitive biases, for example? The fact that anchoring bias means that the first thing people will hear will likely influence how they read the rest. So when you're presenting information, you have to right away be balanced in presenting both sides of a public policy issue, for example. Confirmation bias, that when you're presenting a lot of information, people are just going to look at the things that they already agree with. So these are ways in which understanding cognitive biases can help us inform citizens in a more effective way. So this is just one example of how the domains within collective intelligence can fuel smart governance. And also, we know that intuition and the experiments of of one city or one region can benefit from scientific demonstration. If we want to really measure our impact, we need to bring in tools like randomized controlled trials, focus groups, both qualitative and quantitative methods that help us convince. I mean, here on this call, we have 60, 70 people who are already convinced, but what about the thousands of people who aren't already convinced about the value of citizen expertise? Well, having hard numbers, hard data can really help our advocacy to bring more regions, more mayors, more public servants to believe that citizen expertise can benefit them. And then finally, that the fact that we are building this collective intelligence school in Morocco means that we're breaking down some of the false dichotomies that that democracy is just something for Westerners and that it's not appropriate in other cultures. We believe that these methods are truly international, and they draw upon organic and indigenous traditions in every culture. So, how do we think about how to change governance to become more open and more smart? I mean, my background is in electoral politics and mobilization. I worked on 6 presidential campaigns, including the campaign of Barack Obama in 2008. And I've worked in participatory democracy in Paris and around Europe, as well as in 15 countries in Africa. So, I've worked on both sides of the advocacy conversation. And so I know that there's a lot of resistance, and we can't just think that just by saying, oh, make information available, make your budgets available, citizens will like you. That's not enough for a lot of politicians. We have to really go to the heart of their fears about openness. And there's a fear based on these, what we call salience bias, the thing that they see in the news. What's the most, the most salient example of a citizen's intervening in a public policy debate? Well, it's Brexit, right? People think about Brexit. Well, do we want more direct democracy? And you have to tell them, no, actually, this is not about just throwing a complicated issue and simplifying it into a yes or no referendum. What we're talking about is opening channels of feedback that allow you to understand what's really happening on the ground, understand how to adjust your policy to make it easier to implement, to get citizens on your side, to help you mobilize. And this is true both for politicians and for what we maybe pejoratively call technocrats, but we could call public servants or fonctionnaires. There's also resistance. Well, what do citizens know? We're the ones who are formés, cadrés. We're the énarques. We're the elite that understands public policy. And there's still a lot of resistance to the idea that citizen expertise can actually help, as opposed to just be a nice thing you pat yourself on the back. Yes, we put our thing on Facebook, so we did our job. We've reached out to citizens. No, it's not enough. You have to show, if you want to really change the mentality and open up government, you have to show the people who are resisting it that citizen expertise can help them achieve their goals. It's not a threat to the power structures that exist within public services and ministries. No, citizen expertise can help accelerate digital transformation, accelerate the fight against COVID, the fight against climate change, the fight for sustainable energy and agriculture. But in order to do that, we have to deal with the third problem, which is lower levels of social and institutional trust. This is only going to be reversed if we can solve the problem of information, people getting bad information, misinformation on the internet. This is causing trust in institutions, especially in the West, to go down. And this is going to be a major stumbling block for us in this work in open government if we can't find better ways of informing directly through peer networks, through door-to-door campaigns, through the kinds of neighborhood meetings that allow public servants and citizens to see each other face-to-face, or in the case of a Zoom, screen-to-screen. So what did we learn this year? We learned a lot about the value of citizen expertise to gather data, like in Taiwan, the very successful uptake of their tracking application, crowdsourced observation of the development of the virus. We also seen, especially in Scotland, in the UK, Estonia, Spain, cases where governments have opened up citizens panels and assemblies. These are smaller scale but representative mini publics of local citizens to give feedback on the government responses to the pandemic, as well as science that is more open, open innovation, PPE, supply chain, vaccines. So what we're seeing is that whether it's about gathering data, understanding people's emotional responses and sentiments, getting scientists and drawing on both amateur and professional sources of expertise, that we really have lots of new tools and opportunities if we can support them through our systems of governance. The problem is, though, is that when you introduce these systems, what politicians immediately think of is, I'm going to lose power. I'm going to lose the power to decide. I'm going to lose the power over my budget. So maybe I'll do a little participatory budget with 3% of my budget, but really I'm worried about losing power. And what we're seeing is that if you can create opportunities for collective intelligence and citizen-centered governance that is not directly about decision making. It's about observation. It's about modeling and prediction. It's about proposing ideas or scientists reaching out to one another, hashtag campaigns to promote hand washing or social distancing, wikis to gather knowledge. I mean, these are the ways that we think together, not just in deliberating and deciding, but in all of these 6 what we call functional capacities of collective intelligence. And so the idea is that these can be the gateways. If you can find non-threatening, data-driven ways to involve citizens in governance, that we build trust and lower resistance to the kinds of truly democratic processes or decision-making about budgets, PB, about setting a policy agenda, about deciding. We've seen wonderful examples in France and around the climate convention, in Ireland, around the Citizens Assembly for LGBT rights, women's rights. So we can get to these more intensive democratic levels of involvement, but we need to see this continuum. Otherwise, it's going to be these false debates between policymakers who say, no, we're the ones who are elected, or we're the ones who are trained, and citizens who feel frustrated and excluded. So finally, I think, as some of people have said on this call, that the complexity of these problems, of the pandemic, of climate change, are actually the best argument for open and smart governance. Why? Because an authoritarian top-down response to a pandemic, an authoritarian top-down response to climate change will not be as agile and as sophisticated as one that brings in many sources of data, of expertise, of ideas, and that mobilizes people because they own a piece of the solution. And so we at the School of Collective Intelligence fundamentally believe that the most complex problems of this century can only be solved through a collaborative, inclusive, and participatory approach, whether it's scientific research, citizen priority setting, or mobilization of citizens to change positive behaviors to meet a global pandemic. And so with this, I really do believe that the regional and city level will be drivers of innovation. We invite all the regional and leaders, the NGO leaders on this call, to come meet us at the School of Collective Intelligence. We would love to develop research partnerships with our great partners at Impact for Development. We've done already some great work on the ground, Ramna region in Morocco, and with the Commission Spéciale sur le modèle de développement. So we've already seen that there's a huge appetite for these methods, and we welcome all those who think, as Walt Whitman did, that democracy is a word which still sleeps quite unawakened, a word whose history remains unwritten because we have yet to enact that history. So please do visit us at the School of Collective Intelligence, um6p.ma. I thank you for your attention and I look forward to collaborating with you in the future.